The waves were getting rough that evening, crashing hard against the quiet shoreline as the sky turned dark gray. Most people had already packed up their towels and gone home. But one single dad stayed behind, watching his young son build a sandcastle in the fading light. And that's when he heard it. A desperate cry for help coming from the water. At first, he thought he imagined it. But then he heard it again, weak, panicked, and fading. Without thinking twice, the tired father ran toward the ocean. He had no idea that the woman he was about to save would change his life forever, or that she had been secretly thinking about him ever since that moment. Before we continue this powerful story, take a moment to subscribe to your channel name, like this video, and share your thoughts in the comments. Stories like this remind us how powerful kindness can be, and your support helps us bring more inspiring stories to people everywhere. Now let's begin. David Carter was not a wealthy man. He lived in a small coastal town in Oregon with his 7-year-old son, Ethan. Life had not been easy for David. 3 years earlier, he had lost his wife to illness. Since then, he had been doing everything alone, working long hours as a mechanic, cooking dinner, helping Ethan with homework, and trying his best to be both mother and father. Money was tight. Some months, David had to choose between fixing something in the house or paying for Ethan's school activities. But despite the struggles, David had one rule he always followed. Be kind, no matter what. His late wife used to say, kindness is the only thing in this world that multiplies when you give it away. David never forgot those words. That evening, David had taken Ethan to the beach after work. It was their small tradition every Friday. They didn't spend money on fancy outings, just a simple walk along the shore, collecting shells and talking about their week. Ethan was happily building a sandcastle when the wind suddenly picked up. The ocean looked darker than usual. David was about to tell Ethan it was time to leave when he heard the scream. Help! It was faint, almost swallowed by the sound of the waves. David looked toward the water and saw something moving far beyond the shallow area. At first it looked like someone struggling in the waves. Then he saw a hand rise briefly before disappearing again. Someone was drowning. David didn't hesitate. Stay here, he shouted to Ethan, already running toward the water. The ocean was freezing cold as he dove in. The waves were strong, pushing him backward, but David kept swimming. He finally reached the woman. She was barely conscious, her arms weakly moving as the water pulled her under again and again. David grabbed her and tried to keep her head above the surface. Don't worry, he said, breathing hard. I've got you. It took everything he had to fight the waves and swim back to shore while supporting her weight. By the time he reached the sand, he collapsed beside her, exhausted. Ethan ran over. Dad! Is she okay? The woman coughed violently, spitting out water. After a few moments, she finally managed to breathe normally again. David helped her sit up. Are you all right? He asked gently. The woman looked at him with tired, grateful eyes. Her blonde hair was soaked, her expensive-looking clothes covered in sand. Yes, she whispered. You saved my life. David shrugged. Anyone would have done the same. But that wasn't true. The beach had been nearly empty. The woman studied his face, as if trying to remember every detail. What's your name? She asked. David, he replied. This is my son, Ethan. Ethan waved shyly. The woman smiled faintly. My name is Sophia. David helped her stand. Do you have someone who can pick you up? He asked. Sophia nodded slowly. Yes. I'll call someone. She looked like she wanted to say more, but David was already helping Ethan gather their things. Take care, he said kindly. And just like that, he walked away. David didn't ask for money. He didn't ask who she was. He simply returned home, made Ethan a grilled cheese sandwich for dinner, and thought the day was over. But for Sophia, it was only the beginning. Sophia Loren was not just any woman. She was a billionaire. She owned one of the largest technology companies in the United States. Her business empire stretched across multiple countries, and her face often appeared in financial magazines. But that evening, none of that mattered. All she could think about was the man who had risked his life without asking for anything in return. Over the next few weeks, Sophia couldn't stop thinking about David. She remembered how tired he looked, how worn his clothes were, and yet how calm and kind he had been. He had treated her like any other human being. Not like a billionaire. Not like someone important. Just a person who needed help. Sophia quietly asked her assistant to find him. It didn't take long. Soon she learned everything about David's life, his job at a small auto repair shop, the modest house he struggled to maintain, and how he was raising Ethan alone. The more she learned, the more she admired him. Finally, Sophia decided to visit. One morning, David was working under the hood of a truck at the repair shop when a sleek black car pulled into the parking lot. His coworker whistled. Someone important just arrived. The door opened. Sophia stepped out. David wiped his hands on a rag and walked toward her, confused. Then recognition hit him. "Oh, hey," he said, surprised. "Sophia, right?" She smiled warmly. "Yes. I was hoping you'd remember me." David laughed. "Hard to forget someone you pull out of the ocean." Sophia looked around the small repair shop. "You didn't even ask my last name," she said. David shrugged. "Didn't seem important." Sophia took a deep breath. "David, do you know who I am?" He shook his head. "Should I?" She smiled softly. "I'm the CEO of Loren Technologies." David blinked. His coworker nearly dropped a wrench. But David simply nodded. "Well, that's impressive." Sophia laughed. "That's all you have to say?" David shrugged again. "Look, I'm glad you're okay. That's what matters." Sophia studied him carefully. Most people reacted very differently when they learned who she was. But David's kindness had nothing to do with money. That's when she made her decision. "David," she said gently, "I didn't come here just to say thank you." He raised an eyebrow. "Okay. I came because people like you are rare," she continued. "You saved my life without expecting anything. And I believe kindness deserves to grow." David looked slightly uncomfortable. "You really don't have to." But Sophia interrupted with a smile. "I'm not offering charity." She paused. "I'm offering opportunity." She explained that her company was starting a new community initiative, helping small towns rebuild local businesses and create jobs. "And I want you to help lead it here," she said. David stared at her. "Me?" "Yes. Because someone who risks his life for a stranger is exactly the kind of person I trust to help others." Weeks later, David found himself leading a new project that renovated local shops, supported families, and created opportunities for people in the town. The program helped hundreds of families. But the most important change was in David's life. For the first time since losing his wife, he felt hope for the future again. One evening, as David watched Ethan play in the park, Sophia joined him on the bench. "You know," she said, smiling, "one act of kindness started all this." David nodded. "I guess kindness spreads." Sophia looked at Ethan laughing with other kids. "And sometimes," she said softly, "it saves more than one life." David smiled. Because that day at the beach, he thought he had simply helped someone in trouble. He never imagined that a simple act of courage would transform an entire community. And that's the beauty of kindness. You never know how far it will travel. One small moment, one brave decision, one helping hand. It can change someone's world. So if this story touched your heart, remember this. Kindness doesn't require wealth, power, or fame. It only requires a good heart. And sometimes, the smallest act of kindness can create the biggest ripple in the world. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe to your channel name, like this video, and share it with someone who believes in the power of kindness. Because the world always needs more people like David. Red Heart.